And welcome to today's edition of Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Well, today we're going to be doing a really interesting show. Everybody loves true crime, and I am in the midst of it all the time, not committing it, but analyzing it or testifying about it. So today's show is called Behind the Bench. And I am going to take you, as a forensic psychiatrist and expert witness, I am going to take you behind the bench, behind the scenes of the trials of P. Diddy, Karen Reed, Kohberger, Brian Kohberger, and Luigi Mangione. So let's start with P. Diddy. I had thought that I wasn't going to pay any attention to this trial because the whole thing really kind of disgusts me. Um, and I don't like that he's it's shown there are cameras in the courtroom. Well, wait a minute, what am I saying? No, actually. No, actually there aren't cameras in the courtroom. But it's certainly being covered by television and radio and print every day. And it's just really rather gross, and he's loving the attention, even though he could go be put away for life with the charges that he's facing, racketeering and so on, RICO charges. He does not seem to be particularly perturbed. Now, I know part of that is an act, and he wants to look cool and show the world that he's not worried, that what he did was just fine, and he's the king. But he has to be worried at some level. And it is just really, it's a whole bunch of sordid material, sordid exploits being paraded before the court. Now, oh, wait, maybe I need to make it clear that I am not on his side when I say these exploits paraded. It's not that I am blaming the people who are testifying, because believe me, they do not want to be testifying. They are risking a lot. Cassie Ventura, his former girlfriend, really risked a lot, and I believe they shouldn't have had her testify while she was still pregnant. She's supposedly in her ninth month, and they should have delayed the trial or delayed her testimony because she was up there for days, and the stress that she was under really affected her baby. When babies are inside the mommy's body, inside the uterus, they get affected by everything that's going on outside. So if there's lovely music, they're affected by that. They're calmed by that, and feel good because of that. If they're hearing arguments, that does not have a good impact on them. And in Cassie's case, she was made to recount horrible, horrible fights, beatings due to Diddy. I mean, we've seen the videos of his beating her mercilessly. And there was, that wasn't the only occasion. There were lots of times that she was asked to talk about, and, she was crying at times and so on. It was very brave of her to testify. I mean, I admire her for testifying because he has friends, and especially if he does get locked up for any, get a sentence of prison for any amount of time, he has friends who aren't locked up, and he likes to take revenge. And the people who are testifying and talking about all these horrible things that he did, from beating Cassie to drugs to um, uh, causing somebody's car to explode, to other people that he attacked or had his lackeys attack them. So people who, a lot of his workers, people who he employed, are testifying, have been testifying, and probably more will testify. And and so they're all taking a risk. Now, I don't know which ones were subpoenaed, in other words, made to testify, and which ones voluntarily testified. But either way, the things that they are talking about that are crimes, basically. and that could contribute to getting him, giving him time, getting a verdict of prison time. They are taking their life in their hands because even though Diddy may be in prison, he certainly has a lot of friends on the outside, and he certainly has a lot of money to pay people, not maybe not necessarily his friends, but just, people who will kill other people for money, paid assassins, in other words, or people paid to beat somebody up. I mean, it really is dangerous what they're doing. And so one has to admire them for coming forward and telling the truth, or at least telling some of the truth. I would not be surprised if some of them are hiding some things, the worst things, but what they are talking about is bad enough. And now the question is, will P. Diddy be convicted of anything? Because there is a chance that some people on the jury may think that this is not a crime, that what he has done or does not rise to the charge of racketeering or RICO crimes or things like that. They may decide that what he was doing wasn't nice. He's a bad boy, but that it is that these people participated in the sexual activities out of their own free will, adults consenting. Now, of course, these adults didn't really consent. They were under enormous pressure, and Diddy was threatening to kill them and threatening to do all kinds of things to them if they didn't participate, particularly Cassie, because he loved her. Well, how do you say, it's not really love. If you look at what he did to her, you can't really call it love, but he was in lust with her, he was obsessed with her, all of the above. He thought it was love, but um, it certainly wasn't. You don't treat people you love in the way that he treated her. So, so there is that chance, someone on the jury who might think, well, I don't want the government or the courts to tell me what I can and can't do sexually with my sexual choices. Um, in other words, if someone feels strongly about that, they might purposely not vote to convict him because they may feel that they're making a statement for people's sexual freedom, which is not really what this is about because, I mean, because it's not just about sexual freedom. I mean, the things that he did um, go beyond sex and into crime. Um, it's just really, and he's playing the jury. Well, first of all, he has very good attorneys. He has the best attorneys money can buy, and and he has been wearing clothes to try to look not like a bad boy, but a collegiate, like a prep student, a collegiate prep student. With these sweaters, fuzzy sweaters, to make him seem warm and fuzzy to the jury, and um, and normal, natural, like the kid next door. Um, and he's been smiling at certain jury members. I mean, he's been trying to use his fame, his celebrity status to endear him to the jurors. Now, that may well work with some jurors. They may feel flattered that he was looking at them and smiling at them and winking at them and all of this. I hope not, but obviously these are things that his lawyers probably told him to do, or at least didn't discourage him from doing, because he keeps doing them. Now, what I think is the most important part of the case has not yet been uh, gone into, talked about, testified to. Um, I think the most interesting part, not that it doesn't excuse him in any way, But if I were his lawyer or if I were his psychiatric expert witness, um, I would have told the attorneys who retained me, his defense attorneys, if they retained me, I would have told them that you need to explain to the jury, have a witness or Diddy himself explain to the jury um, why he is this way. And the answer is it's because of his mother. First of all, if you've been watching the trial, you see her walking into court with these tight, low cut dresses. And that is just a tame version of what she was really like during his childhood. I mean, she hasn't changed well, she's changed. I think she did try to tone it down a bit for court, but it's still pretty bad, still pretty prostitute-like. I'll just tell it like it is. And and that really reflects what made Diddy the way he is. And that is when he was growing up, first of all, his father was killed in a drug deal. His father was killed when Diddy was 3 years old. And so he only had his mother and his grandmother, but it was like he and his mother against the world. That's how um, he was made to feel and how they both did feel. And they had an incestuous relationship, Diddy and his mother. If not physically incestuous, I'm not saying, although quite frankly, I do believe it, but I'm not saying 100% that that she raped him, but but it was certainly emotionally incestuous, if not physically. And I think if not sexual intercourse, then I think her uh, cuddling with him and other physical, sexual kinds of things that she did were very inappropriate. And worst, well, not worst, but also, also bad was what she did in her house. Now, Diddy was born in Harlem. He and his mother lived in Harlem, and then they moved when he was a little boy to a place just north of New York City, just north of Manhattan, and kind of like in Westchester. And but she would still have people come on weekends to have parties in her house in Westchester. And before that, she had these people coming over to her house in Harlem. And they would have wild parties, drugs, alcohol, sex, nudity, all around the apartment or house. And Diddy was raised in this kind of an atmosphere. So it is no wonder it was the prelude to his freak off parties. This is what he grew up with. And this overexposure to sex and drugs and all of that was what got him desensitized, particularly to sex. In other words, if he experienced this all the time, it was no longer a turn on. So he needed to go that much further. It's just like when you take drugs and the same amount of heroin or crack doesn't do it for you, or a medical, a prescribed pill. It doesn't do it doesn't do it for you anymore after a certain point. You build up a tolerance. And that is what happened to Diddy, that he built up a tolerance for the kind of sex and atmosphere that he was raised in. And so he needed to make it higher, better, more what? More pornographic to have it be sexually stimulating for him. And so that is where his freak offs come in with having male escorts have sex with the women. And he would be sitting in a corner or in another room masturbating. And he needed it to be more than what he had gotten used to, built up a tolerance to when he was a little boy growing up in this environment. So, it's no wonder that, and his mother also made him believe that he was going to be somebody great. I mean, in normal circumstances, it's good when your mother or and your father tell you you're going to be great and make you believe that, one day you're going to be great and you're going to have a lot of money and you're going to do whatever you want and all of that. Normally that can boost a child's self-confidence and could actually be helpful towards making that child be aim for something better in life. So, not that I don't mean that he represents something better. He did make a ton of money. But anyhow, so all of that is what built up inside of him, and it's unfortunate that I mean, he did make music that sold, made a lot of money with music and his music label and all of that. But he should have stopped there instead of these freak offs and the violence and the sex and the drugs and the rock and roll. Um, well, we need to take a break now for the first segment after, to end the first segment. But I will be finishing off about Diddy in the next segment, and then I'll be getting into Karen Reed and Brian Kohberger and Luigi Mangione. There are so many cases, so little time. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch, where we're talking today about crimes. And I'm taking you behind the bench to delve into these crimes, these trials, more deeply. And so I just was looking up Cassie Ventura, and apparently, as of today, um, just a few hours ago, actually, she was rushed to a New York hospital, and she's in the labor and delivery unit. Now, a source told, I'm reading it from TMZ, and another source tells us Cassie may be having complications. Um, oh man, let's see. Well, I'll check back again before the end of the show, but that's not good. I was worried about that. All right, so let's get back to, you know, P. Diddy's um harm, continues to touch innocent people. Um, Now, fortunately, Cassie has she has a boyfriend or a husband, Alex Fine, who seems like a very caring man, and she has had children. This would be her third child with him. She was 8 months pregnant when she testified, and just now, just days after testifying, she goes into labor. Hey, okay. Anyway, some other interesting things. First of all, they're arguing about whether or not the freak off videos will be shown in court, and then whether they'll be shown to reporters. And that really hasn't been decided one way. So far, the judge uh, is siding with the lawyers for Diddy and with Cassie, who asked that this explicit content remain private. Well, uh, I think they should show it because the jury has to know just how bad it was. All right, what else can I tell you? I'm talking mainly about today's or the most recent testimony in any case. Um, so yeah, so his lawyers are trying to say that that his sexual habits are part of a swinger lifestyle involving consenting adults, and they told jurors that kinky sexual predilections don't equate to sex trafficking. Quotes, Sean Combs is a complicated man, but this is not a complicated case, his lawyer said. This case is about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money. Uh-huh. Oh, God. Um, so they're trying to say he has a bad temper. He's prone to violent outbursts, often with alcohol, jealousy, and drugs. But they're saying that he doesn't, and that he may even warrant domestic violence charges. But they are denying that he engaged in sex trafficking and racketeering, which are the most serious charges that he faces. Now, I don't understand why he is not being charged with domestic violence. Um, but in any case, maybe it has to, I think Cassie had sued him privately, civilly. So maybe it has something, and she did win, so maybe it has something to do with that. Anyway, let's see. In his medicine bag, so his former assistant, David James, told the court that he always traveled with a medicine bag that contained about 30 pills, Advil, Tylenol, water pills to help him lose weight, Viagra pills to help him increase his sperm count. That's what the his assistant testified to. Not to get an erection, but to increase his sperm count. Yes, because if he didn't have an erection, he wouldn't be able to get many sperm into his partner. Also, he took Percocets throughout the day and ecstasy at night. And one of the ecstasy pills that he took was in the shape of Obama's face. I love that. Um, so far they haven't said that Obama was at any of these freak-offs, but his face being on these pills, at least does kind of hint at Obama having maybe more to do with than Obama would like you to know. It's interesting. Just today, there was something that happened at Obama's house. These two security women, got into a fight, and got into a physical fight, and they called for security. They're the security, and they called for security. I Let's see. Oh, and then they tried to paint Combs' lawyers. Wasn't enough that she was pregnant and suffering on the stand. They tried to paint her as the villain with a double life. That she was going out with Combs and also other people, or at least one other musician at the same time. Um, Let's see. Well, I mean, I think those what I've been talking about so far is are the main points. Um, he's kind of telling his undoing is going to be his telling of his legal team what to do. He's trying, whenever in a case a defendant tries to, or a plaintiff, it could be anybody, when you're represented by an attorney, if you try to tell your attorney what to do, it never ends well. Let's see. Uh, oh, yes, he's making millions from prison. Um, with high-end services. So he's renting out his $60 million private plane, private jet to wealthy travelers who had no idea that he was the owner. Um, he has raked in $4.1 million since his arrest on September 16th. Um, and he they so people who have rented his jet apparently don't know that it belongs to Diddy because he has a company that has a name, it's not just this is P. Diddy's plane. Although I guess there would be some people who would pay even more if they knew that. Okay, enough of P. Diddy. I hope he gets the book thrown at him, and I don't mean the encyclopedia. All right, let's see. Who would you like to hear from next? Um, let's see. Well, let's do Karen Reed because there isn't really uh that much to talk about. Well, I mean there's a ton and then and not much at the same time. Karen Reed drives me up a wall because now as you probably know, Karen Reed, this is in Boston, Massachusetts. She is accused of killing her then boyfriend, who was a policeman, um, John O'Keefe. Um, and they were having relationship problems before well they went on a trip and before and after they've been having for quite some time they've been having relationship problems, and he is really a good guy. His sister died and he took her children. Her sister died, his sister died, and they had already lost their father, so the children didn't have any parents left when their mother, his sister, died. And so he um, took the children in. He became their father and their mother, and he was taking care of them really, really very nurturing and very beautifully, very dedicated to them. And Karen um, was jealous because they went on this trip, and she believes that he kissed some woman and that he was, talking with some woman, and she thought that this was somebody who he was going to leave her for. And so when they got home, there were lots of fights, arguments, and both in person arguments and over text and over voicemail. And she was, talking about how you don't love me anymore, and you want to go be with other women, and I love you so much, or I've done so much for you. You get the gist. And then one night they went out drinking, and she at least had a lot of drinks within, like they were out at bars for about 3 hours, and she drank 8 or 9 drinks in 3 hours, strong cocktails. Um, and and then they met some friends and who invited them to come back to their house after they leave the bar. And so she drove him to this bar, I'm sorry, she drove him to these friends' home, and she left him there. She didn't want to go to the party at their house. And so she just left him there, and she figured that, he would get a ride home. Well, she was, so not only now was she angry And had she been angry, and it's the same kinds of things, jealousy and fear of being abandoned by him and all of that. But also, now she had the alcohol on top of it. So she dropped him at these friends' home and drove away. And the question is, the trial, you know, is all about whether she ran him over with her car when she left him at this house. And I say a resounding yes. I say, what more do you need to know? um, I mean, for example, well, the one of the most strongest things is that when she came back, so he didn't come back, obviously. So he died. She killed him. He died. She backed up. She probably accidentally backed up. I'm not saying that she purposely killed him. I'm not saying it's murder one. I am saying it's murder two, that she didn't purposely plan or try to kill him, but it was her actions, her negligence, her really, it was her unconscious mind that did want to kill him. I mean, not necessarily literally, but with all these messages, which, if you're ever going to kill somebody, don't leave evidence, don't leave messages, either voicemail messages or text messages saying how angry you are with them and how you'd like to kill them, or words to that effect, because that does not look good in trial. So, she, what I think happened is that she backed up instead of in other words, instead of putting her car in to go forward, in the gear to go forward in drive. She accidentally put it in reverse, and she was gunning it because she was angry and she wanted to get out of there, and she gunned it into him. The car went in reverse, hitting him. He fell in the snow, and she went home. Now, without realizing that she had hit him, or at least without consciously realizing that she had hit him. Unconsciously, she did realize. Um, so she goes home, and she went home to his house, and she wakes up early in the morning, and she realizes he's not home, and she starts to panic. It's at that point that I think she started to realize that she hit him and she killed him. And so she started calling her friends, and they went to the house where she had dropped him off, and lo and behold, there he was in the snow, dead. And she is trying. Her defense is that, well, her defense is that somebody else killed him. She's trying to say she didn't kill him, somebody else did. And although, well, she's saying in particular the people inside the house who were friends with the police, and who were, this was all a conspiracy, according to her. And to make her look like the one who killed him, when really they killed him for some unknown reason, and their dog bit him for some unknown reason, and that's what happened. And but there are lots of things that are against her, particularly she has this smug expression on her face in the courtroom, like as if, especially when it's somebody who's testifying and saying things that incriminate her, that she doesn't like. She has this look, like, a scornful look, oh, like, you're crazy, why are you saying that? Well, you're lying, that kind of look. And I don't know why her attorneys have not told her to cut it out, because it is not endearing her to the jurors. I mean, she does not look like she is sorry that her boyfriend is dead, whether she killed him or somebody else killed him. She does not at all seem like the grieving girlfriend. And so, and plus, there have been pictures, photographs from this is the retrial that's going on now. She originally had a trial almost a year ago. And so this is the retrial. And uh, she's really oh, so wait, so I was trying to say, so in the at the end of the first trial, there were photographs that got spread in the media of her and one of her attorneys. He had his arms around her. It was a very sexy pose. It seemed like they had been together, having sex together. And even in this trial, there have been some photos of some questionable pictures with her and her attorney, which I don't understand why her attorney allows that to happen. But anyway, well, I mean, I guess, I mean, I guess he likes it, but it doesn't help his case. Um, okay, let's see. Now, also, there are all these protesters outside the courtroom. There are people outside. This was the way it was the first timer, and they're back the second time. There are about the same number of protesters who are yelling, Free Karen Reed, holding placards. And then there are also people, but they are quieter, who are there, like Justice for John O'Keefe. And the jury should have been sequestered because it really isn't good that they have to hear or see. I think they made a special way for them to walk to the courthouse, where they don't have to directly pass through these people, but you can still hear them for miles. All right. Well, I need to take the second break. When we come back, I'll be talking about Luigi Mangione and Brian Kohberger. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Dr. Carol's Couch. Today's edition is looking at true crime, from my perspective as a forensic psychiatrist and expert witness. I've been doing this for over 25 years, hundreds of civil and criminal cases, where I testify for the defense or the prosecution or the defendant or the plaintiff. And it's very interesting work. It's very challenging work. And so, of course, these cases in the news and I also analyze for the media cases in the news, and they do grab my attention. We happen to have a plethora right now of such cases with Diddy and Kohberger and Mangione and Karen Reed. Um, so many cases, so little time. I just wanted to mention, I had forgotten to mention that Karen Reed's first trial ended in a mistrial. That's why there's a second trial. And and uh, I hope that the jury in the first trial, the reason why it was a mistrial was because the jury didn't realize, and this was sort of surprising because either they weren't paying attention or the judge in the first trial didn't make it clear enough. But they seem to get confused with the idea that they didn't realize that they could find her guilty of second degree if they didn't find her guilty of first degree. They somehow thought that she had to be guilty of first degree before they could also find her guilty of second. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So hopefully this jury is smarter, and hopefully this judge, well, it's the same judge, but hopefully the judge will be extra careful in explaining what the jury instructions are. Now, this judge is very interesting. You can tell that she hates Karen Reed. She has seen many Karen Reeds in her day, and there is no doubt that she thinks she's guilty, that the judge thinks she's guilty. But also, she is doing her best. The judge is doing her best to make sure that she does everything by the book, that she tries to be as fair as possible, so that there are no appealable issues. Because if she sneezes in the wrong direction, the defense attorneys are going to appeal it. So I know she's being really careful. You can tell she's spending a lot of time on things. It's really like the Karen Reed show. That is the problem. Karen Reed is loving all this attention. And when she goes out of the courthouse, and she goes through the crowds, notably the crowd Free Karen Reed, and she's like, she thinks she's a celebrity, a star. And it's really disgusting because, we're talking about her dead boyfriend here. All right, let's talk about Kohberger. Um, Brian Kohberger, is the young man who is alleged to have killed 4 students at the University of Idaho: Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Coronado, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin. Now, when this happened in November of 2023, and so of course, it made all the news. When the murder happened, it made, before they caught anybody, it was news, all news all the time. And I was quoted in Newsweek, and I spoke on other outlets as well, talking about how the person who killed these students has to be an incel. An incel, that stands for involuntary celibate. These are men who are filled with rage because of having been rejected by women who, reject their request to go out with them, who reject having sex with them, who reject them any and every which way. So they build up more and more rage for women. Now, there are sites online, groups where they get together and they egg each other on. Oh yes, aren't these women horrible? Women are horrible. We don't need women. All kinds of things like that. Now, how did I know that the killer of these 4 students was an incel? Because there were 2 things that we knew about the murders. First of all, we knew who the victims were. They were showing their pictures all over the place. These victims were beautiful, except for Ethan Chapin, who was the boyfriend of one of them. But the girls were beautiful, especially Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mogen. They were they were Barbie dolls, really. They looked like Barbie. So they were the stereotypical perfect girlfriend. But not only were they beautiful, they were also very accomplished. They did well in school. They were very popular. They had a whole good life ahead of them. It seemed like they were going to be very successful in life. Now, so this is the kind of person that the incels hate, because he would have projected onto them that they would never have gone out with him if he had asked them. And particularly Kaylee, he was stalking Kaylee. And the other reason why I said that it was an incel was because the people, the police and investigators and all that, who had come to the house to examine the crime scene talked about how this was the most violent, bloody crime scene they had ever seen. And so, what does that tell you? And they were killed with a knife. Now, a knife is a very personal way of killing somebody. So, it tells you that he had profound hatred, rage towards these four people. And as evidenced by all the knife wounds and all the blood. So, who would have killed these students in such a bloody way? Well, an incel, because he would have projected onto them the fact that if he had asked them out, they would have said no. So he had all the rage in anticipation of, even I don't, he did not ask them, we have no evidence that he actually asked them out. There is as evidence he stalked them, particularly Kaylee. Um, and and so he was imagining, like he knew that they would never have gone out with with him, and that's true. They wouldn't have. And incels, unfortunately, do themselves in because when they have this rage, they carry around this rage towards women, and the women they meet feel it. They don't necessarily understand it or know the person is an incel or any of that, but they feel this negative energy coming from this rage, even if they're smiling at them. So yes, of course, the three girls wouldn't have. I doubt Ethan Chapin would have gone out with him either, but certainly the three girls wouldn't have gone out with him. He was with every stab, he was thinking that and expressing his rage. Now, um, what did I want to say? Oh, incels call women who look like these three girls, Stacy's. And they call the guys who are with these women, like Ethan, Chads. That's just their name for them, so that they can communicate with each other. Um, so we know that there was DNA found on the knife sheath that matches him. I mean, there's evidence really that is pretty overwhelming. There's evidence that he bought a mask, like a hoodie type mask, that he wore, and evidence that he bought the knife from Amazon. So, so there's a lot, a lot pointing at him. Now, his defense attorney, Ann Taylor, she's doing she's working really hard. I have to give her credit for that. But it's probably going to be for naught because not only because of all the evidence against him and all that, but um, because uh, she actually had represented. This came out early, and I don't know why nothing more has followed from this. But she represented in two trials, nothing to do with Brian Kohberger. Um, she had before these students got killed, she had been involved as the lawyer for two of the parents of the four students. And I think they were one was it was they were economic crimes like shoplifting or I don't remember the exact crimes, but certainly at the end of this trial, if he gets convicted, which I can't imagine that anything else is going to happen, but his defense attorneys are going to look for anything that they can appeal on. Or, well, he's going to be looking, not necessarily the defense attorneys, but he's going to look for anything he can appeal upon. And certainly, you don't have to be a genius to realize that you can appeal upon the fact that that Ann Taylor, his main attorney, had been an attorney for these other two parents of the students that he killed. So of course you can say that she was prejudiced, that he had ineffective assistance of counsel because she felt torn between the families, these two families who lost children, and him. So I don't know. I don't understand why this has gone this far and no one has continued to bring that up. But anyhow, um, I just want to mention one of the important things too, and ironic things, is that uh, one of the important things. Oh, I was going to tell you about he became an incel. His journey towards becoming an incel started when he was in middle school. And he asked out a cheerleader, a blonde cheerleader who looks very much like Kaylee Gonsalves. Or, you could also say similar. I mean, Kaylee and Madison look alike. So you could say that it also goes for Madison. But anyhow, he asked out this blonde cheerleader, beautiful girl, and she rejected him. Not only did she say she wouldn't go out with him, but she made fun of him, and she got the other girls on the cheerleading team to make fun of him and everything else. And that was his first humiliation, major humiliation. And so um, so this is what started him on this path. And this is also what particularly got him to pick out, to choose as his first, or we think it's his first, we don't really know, murder victims, Kaylee and Madison. What else did I want to say? I know time is ticking. There's so much that's so interesting about each of these cases. Now, his defense attorneys have tried to get the death penalty taken off the table, which they weren't successful in doing. And they tried to say given, I don't know, they've tried to get various things off the table. Like, for example, the witness who described the person that she saw in the hallway of their house as having bushy eyebrows. So Ann Taylor tried to get bushy eyebrows, the words out of the case. Like, she didn't want anybody to mention bushy eyebrows. That did not that did not fly. Um, but they did bring up also his autism. Now, they brought up his autism in a mistaken context because they were saying that they think that he shouldn't get the death penalty because the jury is going to look at him and see his sort of strange movements and strange way of being, and that will go against him when they're deciding his verdict and the sentence. And that the judge didn't go along with that. That doesn't make any sense. But what they should have done is used his autism, which was supposedly just diagnosed, used it to explain why he perpetrated these crimes as an excuse, as a maybe like not guilty by reason of insanity. It's a stretch, but they could have tried to use autism for that, because really it was, all this that I've been talking about in regard to being an incel, that is why he committed this crime. So they should have used that, not guilty by reason of insanity because of his autism. And I'm sure he has other psychiatric diagnoses that one could attach to him. And that should have been the reason for taking away the death penalty. I think he should be found guilty, but I do not think he should get the death penalty. That just seems like too cruel an unusual punishment for someone his age and someone, I mean, of course, it was a horrendous crime. He killed 4 people in horrendous ways, but the death penalty, death by a shooting squad, a firing squad, just seems to be a bit too barbaric for America. Well, I didn't get to Mangione. That's too bad. However, his trial hasn't started yet, and I am sure I will talk to you about him before or when it does. Thank you for listening to Dr. Carole's Couch. I'm your psychiatrist host.